صباح الخير واهلا بيكم. الحقيقه احنا شاكرين طبعا لحضوركم وحضوركم في الميعاد والتزامكم بالمواعيد ومشاركتكم في الفاعليه وورشه العمل دي، وشاكرين طبعا اولا لسعاده السفير محمد نصر، لأنه طبعا حضراتكم كلكم عارفين السفير محمد نصر، وطبعا احنا بنشرف بوجوده معانا. فكرة ان هو يستقطع من وقته في وقت البلد كلها مشغولة بقمة التغير المناخي، وهو بيقود فريق الحقيقة بيواجه صعوبات وتحديات وشغل كتير جدا. فإحنا شاكرين جدا لوجوده ولاهتمام الوزارة، والحقيقة ده بيبعث برسالة مهمة في تقديرنا عن أهمية المجتمع المدني وأهمية منظمات المجتمع المدني في وجودها في الدولة بشكل عام، بس كمان في التعامل معاها وتحضيرها لقمة المناخ. أنا رباب المهدي، أستاذة العلوم السياسية بالجامعة الأمريكية بالقاهرة، ومديرة مركز حلول للسياسات البديلة. مركز حلول للسياسات البديلة زي ما اسمه بيقول هو مركز بحثي بالجامعة الأمريكية بالقاهرة، بيسعى لتقديم حلول بديلة للمشاكل اللي بتواجه مصر بشكل أساسي، والمنطقة العربية والإفريقية والجنوب. والحقيقة هو بيشتغل على فكرة إيجاد الوصلة ما بين الأبحاث الأكاديمية والأبحاث التنفيذية. فإحنا ما احناش مركز أكاديمي صرف، ولكن إحنا مركز أكاديمي يسعى لتقديم حلول بديلة قابلة للتطبيق، وده الحقيقة بيتم عن طريق عملية تشاركية. ففي كل الأبحاث والحلول اللي بننتجها لازم يبقى في ممثلين للحكومة، ممثلين لأصحاب الأعمال، ممثلين للمجتمع المدني، وبالنسبة لنا دول 3 أطراف في معادلة صناعة القرار مهم إن هم يلتقوا. فالحقيقة ما فيش أحسن من النهاردة كيوم بيمثل المفهوم اللي وراء مركز حلول للسياسات البديلة، في ممثلين للوزارات المختلفة، في ممثلين للمجتمع المدني، وبنسعى إن احنا في آخر اليوم يبقى عندنا مجموعة من المخرجات ومن التوصيات هتدخل في التقرير الأخير اللي هو بيمثل وجهات نظر المجتمع المدني المصري، واللي بتشرف على وضعه الدكتورة لما الحتو، خبيرة المناخ والبيئة، اللي هي معانا من أول ما العملية دي ابتدت. أخيراً عايزة أشكر زملائي في فريدريش إيبرت، وأنا بقول زملائي لأنه الحقيقة هم كان في تعاون، هم السبب في أنه إحنا ننسق اليوم ده. إحنا شاكرين جداً لريتشارد بروبست والوليد منصور وللما وآخرين والأستاذ خالد إن هم أتاحوا لنا الفرصة دي إنه إحنا نستضيفكم، وإن احنا نكمل العملية دي كعملية تشاركية، ولكن هي بالأساس عملية مصرية خالصة بيتبناها مجموعة من الوزارات، بس على رأسهم أكيد الإشارة اللي بنشوفها النهاردة بوجود سعادة السفير محمد نصر. ريتشارد.
Thank you very much, Rabab. I keep it short because, of course, Rabab already said everything, but I would like to just reiterate to salute and to greet Ambassador Mohamed Nasser, Ambassador Frank Hartmann, former member of the European Parliament, Arne Lietz, and, of course, all of you, because you are at the core, all representatives from different ministries, because we know that all ministries have to work together in order to make COP27 a successful one. but also all representatives from different civil society organizations, because no COP can be successful without having an actively involved civil society on a national level, but also on an international level. I'm the director of the Friedrich Ebert Foundation, a German political foundation linked to the Social Democratic Party in Germany. We have been working here in Egypt since 46 years to be precise, mainly on societal dialogue and on political dialogue and on exchanging international experiences. You might wonder, why is a German political foundation interested in climate change? And I can tell you, it hasn't been that long that the party we are affiliated to and also the foundation has been focusing on climate change. But we realized the last couple of years that social questions and climate questions are deeply linked and enshrined. The question of just transition, the question of climate justice, but also a fair burden sharing between the global north and the global south. These are core questions, and they are core for COP27. Other than this, of course, the question of generational justice. How can we organize our economy, our society, and our life in general so that we are not living on the expenses of future generations? This is, of course, for a foundation which has justice as one of its core values, crucial. And we are convinced that having civil society involved, along with government, along with the business community, with all different actors of society, is crucial to make fullest use of any COP. COP27 is certainly an opportunity. It's a huge opportunity for Egypt. It's a huge opportunity for Egyptian civil society to show what knowledge you have, how you can actually also help and assist in solving problems on a local level. I think that's a huge opportunity for you. It is a huge opportunity for the country. The president is most probably traveling to Germany very soon in order to attend the Petersburg Climate Dialogue. And that's a very important sign that the question of climate is taken very serious. But most importantly, it's an opportunity for the world. A successful COP is not only important for the country, but it's important for all of us, global north and global south, government, civil society. And therefore, we are very happy that, and I'm concluding, that we found with APS and with AUC and of course Rabab El-Mahdi, all her team, the most valuable partner to convene this workshop today with all of you. And I would like to thank all the team behind the scenes, those who you see, those who you don't see, from APS, but also from my own team, for making this happen. And I would like to wish you all a very successful day. And I would like to hand the floor back to my dear friend Rabab.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here. Sabah al-Khair, everybody, to be here at the American University in this prestigious academic institution, and in particular to see all of you, representatives of the government and the civil society, together in a dialogue on the preparation of COP27. We think this is very crucial, very important, the interaction between the government, the civil society, and the private sector. And I'm very grateful that Ambassador Mohamed Nasser can be here, one of the extremely busy persons, being the chief negotiator at the Foreign Ministry for the climate change negotiations. And also later, Mr. Mukhieldin, the climate champion. We are at a very crucial time. Time is flying. We have 4 months to go until COP27 is taking place. The preparations are extremely intensive, and we are, in fact, Richard, you just mentioned this to the audience. We are preparing a visit by the President al-Sisi to Germany. We are organizing a bilateral international conference co-chaired by Egypt and Germany, the so-called Petersburg Dialogue, and we are trying to give all our support to the Egyptian preparation of COP27. The conference will be chaired by the Foreign Minister Shukri and the German Foreign Minister Baerbock, and the two leaders, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and Chancellor Scholz, will meet for a long exchange, not only on the climate policy, but also on all our bilateral topics, and there are a lot of issues to be discussed. We have a large challenge ahead of us. Of course, climate change, fight against climate change is the largest challenge for mankind. You all know that. But currently, to be honest, we are facing lots of other issues in Europe, namely the consequences by the Russian war in Ukraine There are geopolitical implications, financial implications, economic consequences of that conflict. And that is highly affecting the energy market and also our commitment to climate change. That is something we have to discuss back home and with you. I promise you our commitment to climate change and fight against climate change remains the same, but the conditions are getting more difficult. The energy prices in Europe are tripling. We are now substituting the gas import from Russia. We're trying to get gas from other sources. There have been debates whether or not we have to re-enter into coal. We want to avoid that, but we are facing a situation that due to the energy crisis, we may have no other option but to temporarily look for other sources of energy. That is a big issue of our discussion. And you all know the food prices around the world are increasing. Egypt is facing tremendous difficulties and many other countries as well. And we are trying to do our best also to help and to support Egypt on the financial implications and also on the food security issue. We have to tackle all these challenges at the same time, and they are interrelated. But we should not and we will not lose sight of the largest and the long-term challenge, which is the climate change. I can tell you that our still relatively new government, Social Democratic Party, and I welcome Arne Lietz from the SPD in Germany, and the Green Party and the Liberal Party, they have climate change fight in the core of their program. That is something they had been elected for, because people are highly involved and they are demanding a lot from us, even though in times of other crises, to remain course on the climate change and on our energy transition. And just yesterday, I can tell you a very important legal decision had been taken in Germany. We are, as a result also of the Ukraine war and the energy implications that is having, we are increasing our proportion of electricity production by renewable energy from 38% to 80% by 2030, within the next 8 years. That is a very tremendous and very ambitious goal, and that is also a result of the current energy crisis we are facing. So we don't have alternatives. We are not going back to fossil, but we have to re-intensify our objectives in terms of renewable energy. And there we cooperate closely with the Egyptian government and also with many of you from the civil society and the non-governmental organizations. I'm really impressed on the variety of organizations sitting here together. I'm very happy that the state actors, the private sector, and also the civil society are acting together. And your president has declared this year as the year of the civil society. And we are taking this serious, and we think that you take an important role also in expressing your voices and entering into a dialogue on the targets the Egyptian government is formulating. We're looking forward to the NDCs, maybe within the next couple of weeks. We are seeing the nationally determined contribution by Egypt, and that is a very important target. And we would also like to encourage the Egyptian government to enter into the monitoring process, where we are also participating, that these NDCs are also being discussed with peer states and with partner governments. I thank very much the Friedrich Ebert Stiftung for this initiative. It's great to be here. And also Professor Mardi, thank you very much for chairing this. It's important interaction we are having here. There are not that many chances, but we did have a lot of very fruitful exchanges with the Egyptian government, with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Environment and other ministries, with the private sector, with the civil society, and that is very important. There are three priorities I would shortly mention on the way to Sharm El-Sheikh. First, it is, as already mentioned, the NDCs. We're looking ahead for that, and also the question of the monitoring process will be essential for the future. You, Mohamed Nasser, had just been with your minister a couple of weeks ago in Bonn for the subsidiary bodies conference, the SP56. The global stocktake is very critical in raising the ambition for successful collective climate action. Secondly, the $100 billion question, the global climate, the Green Climate Fund. We remain committed to that. We will have to find solutions in the contribution and distribution between adaptation and mitigation, but it remains clear, and also the G7 countries have recommitted their support to the climate fund. And my government, even though facing lots of other challenges and other crises, we remain on course. And that, I think, is a very important and impressive signal the G7 has given also in the summit in Elmau recently by setting up the so-called Climate Club. Secondly, reporting on the progress of the Global Goal on Adaptation, the GGA, should be finalized. And that is the third point. So first one is national determined contribution. Second, the $100 billion promise for the climate fund. And thirdly, the global goal on adaptation. So we have made a lot of progress, but a lot of things remain to be done. Time is running, so I'm very happy that we have this venue today. And I will not preempt too much of what Mohamed Nasser will be saying. Thank you very much for the initiative by the Frederick Ebert Foundation and also the support of Anne Leeds coming here to contribute to the panel in a moment later. And thank you very much to the American University where we can have this interaction. So I'm really looking forward to our exchange and your introductory remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Hartman. قبل ما ننتقل لسعادة السفير محمد نصر، بس أحب أبلغ حضراتكم إنه هيبقى في تغيير بسيط في الأجندة. دكتور محمود محي الدين هيشرفنا الساعة 11:30، فمعلش إحنا هنزق بس الكوفي بريك، استراحة القهوة هنأخرها شوية، مش هتبتدي 11:30 لأنه الدكتور محمود محي الدين جاله اجتماع مفاجئ في نفس الوقت اللي احنا كنا متفقين ان هو هيكون موجود فيه، وهو مشكورا الحقيقه بدل ما يلغي وايمانا منه باهميه وجود حضراتكم والتواصل معاكم قرر ان هو يحضر بنفسه، بس هيشرفنا الساعه 11:30. فبس بقى حابه يعني استميحكم عذرا انه احنا هنطول بس شويه. سعاده السفير اتفضل.
Thank you so much, Excellencies, Excellency Ambassador Hartman, Dr. Rabab, Dr. Richard, Mr. Leeds, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues and partners. At the outset, let me extend my thanks for Alternative Solutions Center, the American University in Cairo, and the Frederick Ebert Foundation for hosting today's event that comes very timely, almost 4 months, I would rather call it 120 days, ahead of COP27 in Sharm El-Sheikh. It is my great pleasure to be speaking to you and with you today. It is our firm conviction as COP27 presidency team that the Egyptian civil society and other stakeholders have an invaluable role and contribution within and around the conference. And it is crucial to engage and seek to maximize the output of this potential. I'm keen to seize this opportunity to share our views on the road to Sharm El-Sheikh and enrich our work with your useful inputs and reflections. And I can't but to thank everyone, each in his or her domain, for the tireless work since the announcement of Egypt as the host of COP President of COP27. I'm following with great interest the discussions and exchanges with the team and with several ministries on different issues. I'm pleased to hear about the exciting ideas and events happening during or under preparation. I have had the opportunity to engage with many of you individually and collectively at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and outside it, in Egypt and abroad. And again, we reiterate our keenness to seize every opportunity for a productive civil society engagement, particularly with partners from the Egyptian civic space. We made sure that the team has dedicated resources for civic engagement to support deepening this relationship. Distinguished participants and colleagues, as announced previously on several occasions, our vision for COP27 is clear and focused. We spent 6 years negotiating the Paris Rulebook, and it's time now to transition from commitments and pledges to concrete action and specific deliverables. Science tells us that we are most certainly off track and that the window of opportunity is rapidly closing. The latest IPCC reports gave us a reality check on where we are, both in terms of adaptation and mitigation. It is clear that we need urgent action through scaling up and implementing mitigation ambition by announcing and implementing the NDCs. We need to ensure effective and well-resourced adaptation and solid resilience solutions and deliver a transformative adaptation agenda. We need to ensure the provision of reliable, appropriate, and predictable finance to assist developing countries in making their contribution to the global effort in line with their needs and circumstances. And we need to find a way forward to assist in averting, minimizing, and addressing loss and damage. And since this COP is taking place in Africa, we need to deliver on some of the most prominent African priorities, as well and be able to reflect the needs and be cognizant of the circumstances of our continent. I'm just back from a quick trip to Addis Ababa, where I have heard firsthand the clear request for more discussions and outcomes on a transformative adaptation and just transition, which should be supported by appropriate finance. And as long as we are giving priority for implementation, then it is only natural that we acknowledge that this requires the input, contribution, and involvement of all stakeholders, which means that we, as host and presidency of COP27, are committed to provide an environment for inclusive, participatory, dynamic, and meaningful dialogue with observers, civil society, and stakeholders from across the climate spectrum. It is our belief that each constituency of the broader spectrum of the civil society is an integral part of the solutions that we seek. Youth, women, academia, private business, workers, farmers, environmental NGOs, in addition to parliamentarians, media, faith-based organizations, and persons with disabilities. All are bringing and will continue to bring fresh energy, real-world perspectives, and innovation to be integrated in the deliberations and the outcomes. We demonstrated this conviction in managing our most important international engagements to date, including when we co-hosted the May ministerial meeting in Copenhagen and when we were at the SBs in Bonn. We are planning to continue to ensure this substantive engagement during the regional climate weeks, Petersburg Dialogue in Berlin, pre-COP in Kinshasa, and eventually at COP27 in Sharm El-Sheikh. We also spared no efforts to connect and engage with our colleagues from Egyptian civil society, share with them our views and plans, informing them of opportunities for better engagement and better engagement with the international climate scene, as well as being privileged by appearing and speaking at your events in Egypt and abroad. Our conversation today will most certainly widen and enlarge our circle of engagements and scope of our partnerships. Ladies and gentlemen, our presidency's action agenda will feature several thematic days where we trust that the views of civil society will be heard. We dedicated a standalone day for civil society and action for climate empowerment during COP27. In addition, I'm sure that by now many of you have already engaging with Egypt's climate champion, Dr. Mahmoud Mohiuddin, who has been working tirelessly to link the formal and informal tracks under the Marrakesh Partnership and its action agenda, and enabled the Egyptian COP presidency of improving the scale and quality of its outreach. From our part, and as incoming presidency, and while fully observing the rules, code of conduct, and regulations prescribed by the UNCCC Secretariat with regard to participation, we are exploring every avenue to improve the participation and representation of Egyptian and African civil society at COP27, to have their voices well heard at different functions, while aiming at addressing the structure imbalances in civil society representation between the global north and the global south. Allow me to conclude by saying that COP27 will rely on your support and friendship, on your activism, and as indispensable ingredients of successful COP. So this concludes my written input. I would like to take you where we are now. It is very important that we engage with the civil society. And of course, His Excellency alluded to some of the points I'm going to make. Where are we now this year? We started this year as a COP presidency by trying to identify what would be the outcomes after a very successful and ambitious Glasgow COP. The idea was, how can we deal with the COVID-19 thing? That was the main challenge that we're thinking of in January. Now, let's look at where we are. We have a food crisis. There is an energy crisis, there's a geopolitical crisis. All of them have an impact on climate change. We have science that is telling us that we are off track, both on mitigation and adaptation. We have meetings under desertifications and oceans who are telling us that things have to be done at scale and at speed. And we have a global or international community who is still finding its way on dealing with major challenges. So, as a COP president, we are taking this into consideration, and we are working tirelessly with all the partners, and we rely very heavily on civil society and NGOs to push together with us as presidency and other countries who are still committed to the issue of climate change on specific elements. One, or the most important of them, that we keep the spirit and the political will that was shown in Glasgow to be also shown in Sharm El-Sheikh. Not only by words, but also by participation at the highest level, this is one. And two, by coming forward with real commitments and pledges and delivery on the ground by those who can. Meaning that we are looking at leaders and leaderships in many countries, be it developing or developed, and Germany is on top of them, to come forward in Sharm El-Sheikh and say, we are still united and committed as an international community. We are still united and committed to implement as a global society from all its stakeholders, be it governments or civil society or private sector. By one, participation, two, delivery on the ground, three, by continued and enhanced ambition. Continued and enhanced ambition not only in the mitigation front, but also on the adaptation front, and also, and most important, on the finance part. So if I just borrow the 3 points that were made by His Excellency, but I'll try to put them in our format. The first point is that we need to keep the ambition high and no backsliding. Yes, we are hearing that some countries are revisiting their pledges to move forward, but we hope that they come and clarify that this is a very short-term action. If taken, it is very short, but the transition is happening as envisaged. As we are really concerned with some of the news and some declarations that comes forward on moving forward the deadlines on phasing down of some fuels or not taking the ambitious actions and the bold actions, but we are also encouraged by commitments that we have seen coming out of the G7 under the leadership of Germany. We are also encouraged by what we see on commitments to deliver by 2030, which we hear, like what we just heard from His Excellency from Germany's point of view. So we want ambition, and we don't want to see any backsliding. And this should be a commitment that comes from the leaders attending in Sharm El-Sheikh. The second point is the voices of the developing countries need to be taken into consideration. When we talk about transformative adaptation, it has to be transformative adaptation and not just a talk about adaptation. When we talk about loss and damage, it has to be loss and damage. We need to deliver on the loss and damage part. We cannot just talk about loss and damage while people are losing their lives and people are losing their valuables and economies are being hard hit in many developing countries. So we have to see an adaptation, a transformative adaptation agenda coming out of Sharm El-Sheikh. And we rely again on the civil society and on the partners to help us and help the parties deliver on that. We need to take the issue of just transition, equity and just transition. This is the core of the transition of many developing countries. All countries, we all agree to the transition. We all agree to that. We all committed to that in Paris. We all reconfirmed our commitment in Glasgow. But it is time when it comes to implementation, and this is the focus of our COP, it is time to really implement things in line with science and following the principles, and where the justice plays a very important role. Justice means that you have to take the social and economic dimensions into consideration. And the third one is we need to have the appropriate finance. We need also the same transformation to happen in the financial sector. We cannot continue doing business as usual in finance and say that if your project is not bankable, means it's not revenue generating or profit generating, then it's not eligible to get support. Because many developing countries do not have bankable projects. And many countries in Africa, I have to say, like 80%, almost 80%, and don't quote me on the percentage, many countries in Africa are not investment-grade countries, so they will never attract the private sector, or the cost of finance will be extremely high for them. So there is a reality check in Sharm El-Sheikh that we hope that we deliver on. So we need to deliver on continue the ambition and no backsliding and really moving forward on when it comes to mitigation and in action and in pledges. We need to deliver a transformative adaptation agenda and on loss and damage. We need to be very clear that we are really doing the transformation and moving on to appropriate finance, and not just finance, not just a repackaging of existing finance. It is real finance, it is appropriate finance, and it is finance that delivers, that is in line with the needs. Of course, we are very much into fulfilling the 100 billion, but let's look at the rest of the picture. I mean, when you look at the reports on the needs to implement the existing NDCs in developing countries, it is the scale of 5.6 trillion up to 2030. So we need to take all these ingredients into consideration. Final point as COP presidency. And sorry that I'm talking with passion. I've been doing this since 2007, not as old as Dr. Ahmad Adli was been doing it before 1992, but at least I'm old enough in this process. One thing that I think is very important, that when we come to Sharm El-Sheikh, we need all to think of why I'm going to Sharm El-Sheikh, or why I am in Sharm El-Sheikh, and why should I be in Sharm El-Sheikh. And the first thing is that we are all facing the existential threat. I mean, it is not differentiating between developed and developing countries, and it is for our kids, future generations, and for those of you who haven't had kids yet, inshallah, when God, Rabbana yarzuqku, you will feel the same feeling. So we need to be there because we want to deliver. And as COP presidency, we identified this COP as an implementation COP because we have had all the cycles of pledging and pledging. I've been in this process since we were doing NAPAs, and then NAPs, and then NDCs, and then low emission development plans. And it's all plans and plans and plans. They have delivered, yes, they have delivered, but not to the scale and not to the speed that is needed, and not up to the expectation of our people, and not to the expectation of science, and not in line with the science tells us. So in brief, this is a COP, one, to confirm that we are really committed to the climate change, move forward politically and in implementation. Two, that this is a COP for implementation, and we start really working instead of having another rounds and rounds and rounds of pledging and looking at the pledges and revisiting the pledges. It is time to make those pledges move to be action on the ground. I thank you, Dr. Rabab, and apologies for taking that much time.
شكرا سعادة السفير مرة تانية. بس عايزة أكد على يعني كانت حاجة الحقيقة مشرفة إنه سعادة السفير يأكد على فكرة equity and justice. إحنا حتى الشعار بتاعنا التنمية العادلة، والحقيقة دي من الحاجات اللي إحنا مهتمين جدا في حلول إنه هي يبقى بنقود بيها أي تدخلات أو مساعدات بنعملها للتحضير لمؤتمر تغير المناخ.